Hi, fourth graders. Today we are going to start Unit 3. In this unit, we will focus on our essential question, how do we respond to nature? Before we start, I want you to imagine yourself taking a walk in the forest. What are some things you see, hear, or feel? Keep those thoughts in mind as we begin this unit. Our focus for reading today is to identify the key details in the text to form a main idea. A little helpful hint is that a main idea is what the text is mostly or mainly about. Details are used to help support your main idea. Follow along as I read. A Bird's Free Lunch, an excerpt from The Wit of a Duck and Other Papers by John Burroughs. John Burroughs was a popular nature writer whose essays helped start the conservation movement. He was best known for his essays about birds, flowers, and rural scenes observed from his home in the Catskill Mountains of New York. Of his beloved home, Burroughs said, "Those hills comfort me as no other place in the world." Paragraph 1. One winter, I fastened pieces of suet and marrow bones upon the tree in front of my window. Then I sat at my desk and watched the birds eat their free lunch. The jays bossed the woodpeckers bossed the chickadees, and the chickadees bossed the kinglet. The kinglet was the least of all, a sort of hop-o'-my-thumb bird. He became quite tame, and one day alighted upon my arm as I stood leaning against the tree. I could have put my hand upon him several times. I wonder where he roosted. He was all alone. He liked the fare so well that he seemed disposed to stop till spring. During one terrible night of wind and snow and zero temperature, I feared he would be swept away. I thought of him in the middle of the night, when the violence of the storm kept me from sleep. Imagine this solitary atom in feathers drifting about in the great Arctic out of doors and managing to survive. I fancied him in one of my thick spruces, his head under his tiny wing, buffeted by wind and snow, his little black feet clinging to the perch and wishing that morning would come. The fat meat is fuel for him. It keeps up the supply of animal heat. None of the birds will eat lean meat. They want the clear fat. The jays alight upon it and peck away with great vigor, almost standing on tiptoe to get the proper sweep. The woodpecker uses his head alone in pecking, but the jay's action involves the whole body. Yet his blows are softer, not so sharp and abrupt as those of the woodpecker. Pecking is not exactly his business. Now that we've read our text, let's go back and look for key details to help me form a main idea. Now, as I read, I was already forming a main idea in my head based off what I read and based off what I thought that this text was mostly about. And that's good to have kind of like an idea in the back of your head. But now I want to kind of confirm my thinking with details that I find in my text. So I'm going to start with paragraph 1. I underlined the sentences where the jays boss the woodpeckers boss the chickadees, and the chickadees boss the kinglet. The reason why I underlined that is because this detail explains how the birds interact as they eat. It's almost like, one bird is, a lot bigger or stronger than other birds, and that's why it kind of goes down this pyramid. Then realizing in paragraph 2 that the kinglet is a small bird. They described it as a hop on my thumb. That's just another way to say very small bird. We also knew that because of that description of the kinglet, the author was very afraid of what was going to happen to that bird based off the weather conditions. He described it as, it was windy and snowy and the temperatures were very cold outside. So the author really showed that he was worried for this bird. Then in paragraph 4, I put a bracket instead of paragraph 4 because I liked the descriptions in paragraph 4, but I wasn't going to underline everything. So I put a bracket off to the side, and then I made myself a little note trying to kind of summarize paragraph 4 into my own words. So what paragraph 4 was about, it mainly just described how the birds get their food. So I liked how it described, what the woodpecker does to get their food, what the jays did to get the food. So instead of underlining everything in paragraph 4, I jotted myself a little note to kind of keep it nice and simple. So now on the next slide, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of those details and again in my own words, try to create a main idea. What was this mostly about? So now that I've underlined all of my key details, gathered my thinking, this is the main idea that I came up with. This text was mainly about the birds that the author observed as they interacted with each other. He knows a lot about birds and really cares about them. One thing I like to mention about main idea is your words don't have to exactly look like mine or someone else's. The big thing here is that our main ideas are fairly similar. So if you were saying a main idea that this text was only about woodpecker as well, then that might not be correct. Versus if you said, oh, I know this was about birds and how the author really enjoyed watching them and whatnot, that's pretty similar to the main idea here. So yes, your main idea can sound different, but again, we want to make sure that we understand what this was mostly about. Great job today. We were able to use the key details we found in our text to form a main idea. Tomorrow, we will read a new fictional text.